When I married into my wife's, let's just say the welcome wagon never showed up. Her parents had me pegged from the jump, figured I was broke, going nowhere and probably marrying their daughter for a free ride. So they made me sign a prenup. Yeah, they insisted. Said it was for peace of mind. Funny thing is, I'm now worth 5 times what they are, and guess who's suddenly not so into contracts anymore? Back then, things were rocky with her folks. I can still picture those stiff smiles and sideways glances, like I was some stray dog that wandered in off the street. I was working in sales at the time, hustling hard, putting in long hours, and dreaming of starting my own business. But to them, all they saw was a guy with no pedigree, no connections, and not enough zeros in his bank account. They didn't trust me, and they made no effort to hide it. We came from 2 very different worlds. My parents were salt-of-the-earth types, my dad coached high school football, and my mom ran a small-town coffee shop. We didn't have much, but we had enough. Her family? Big house, country club memberships, dinners with people who had last names that meant something in their circles. They weren't mean, exactly, just cold, calculating, and way too proud of their own status. And in their eyes, I didn't measure up. Then came the prenup. A few months before the wedding, they dropped it on me like it was no big deal. But man, it hit hard. They dressed it up like it was a formality, but I knew what it really was, a test. A warning. A way to remind me that no matter how close I got, I'd never really be one of them. And this wasn't your basic, boring prenup either. This one had a clause that said if we split, I'd owe them money for whatever help they gave while I built my business. Can you believe that? That document hung over me like a weight, not just legally, but emotionally. It screamed, "We don't believe in you," every time I looked at it. They thought I'd be mooching off their daughter for the rest of my life, chasing pipe dreams, never making it on my own. They didn't care how many hours I worked or how serious I was. To them, I was just another guy talking big with nothing to back it up. Still, I signed it. So did my wife. We didn't do it with smiles on our faces. There were arguments, tension, a whole lot of unspoken stuff in the air. But we were in love, and we weren't about to let their judgment tear us apart. We made a pact. Whatever happened, we'd face it together and show them they were wrong about me. And we did. It took time, a lot of late nights, missed holidays, and shoestring budgets. But the business started to grow. Slowly at first, then faster. Especially once I figured out how to make social media work for us, things took off. Before long, I wasn't just doing well. I was thriving. I'd built something real, something valuable. And out of nowhere, I realized I was wealthier than her parents ever were. That's when they changed their tune. A few days ago, they came over for dinner. Everything seemed normal. Small talk, polite laughter, the usual polite routine. But after we put our little boy to bed, they sat us down and suddenly got real serious. Said they'd been thinking about it and decided the prenup wasn't necessary anymore. That I'd proven myself, and they saw no reason to keep it around. I just sat there, stunned. After all the crap they put me through, they wanted to erase it like none of it ever happened. Just pretend the cold shoulders, the doubt, the constant judgment were all in my head. I wasn't going to let them rewrite the story. I reminded them, bluntly, that the prenup had been their idea, not mine. That they were the ones who made it a condition for me joining the family. And now that I'd made it, they wanted a do-over? I even cracked a joke, said I'd hate for them to lose the safety net they were so desperate to build. Not sure they got it, but I didn't really care. That's when things went south. They got defensive, said they were just trying to protect their daughter. That it had nothing to do with me, really. But let's be honest, it had everything to do with me. They assumed I'd fail. They bet against me. And now that the odds flipped, they couldn't deal with it. They didn't get it. How much it stung to watch them pretend like they'd always been in my corner when I knew better. So I told them it was time to leave. I asked them to respect our home, especially with our son asleep just down the hall. But of course, they didn't go quietly. They accused me of being ungrateful, said I didn't appreciate everything they'd done. But here's the truth, they never did any of it for me. Whatever help they offered was for her, not because they believed in me or supported what I was building. I wasn't going to let them drag me into their drama. Then they pulled their lowest move yet. They turned to my wife and tried to pit her against me. Said I didn't care about family, that I wasn't willing to meet them halfway. But she wasn't buying it. She saw it for what it was, manipulation. Since that night, the air's been different. My wife still keeps some contact with them, but they've been relentless. Trying to guilt her, nudge her toward leaving, convincing her to walk away from everything we've fought so hard to build. Honestly, the money isn't what matters to me anymore. Sure, I could write them a check today and cover every cent they ever pitched in back when things were tight, though believe me, it wasn't exactly a fortune. But that's not the point here. This isn't about settling a debt. I'm not going to spend the rest of my life feeling like I owe them something just because they supported their own daughter for a brief moment in time. I've put in the work. I've done more than enough to even the score in every way that actually counts. What really eats at me is how they've treated me all these years. It's like no matter what I do, I'm still on the outside looking in. They've never really accepted me as part of the family. In their eyes, I'm just some guy who married into their wealth. They act like they can control the direction of my marriage simply because they have deep pockets and a last name with clout. Honestly, it turns my stomach. I've had it. I looked my wife in the eye and told her straight, I'm done bending over backwards to win her parents over. I'm through playing along with their power games. If they want to keep pushing, let them push. But I'm not giving them what they're after. I won't let them drive a wedge between us. Now, as far as the prenup goes, I'm not completely against ending it, but if that's on the table, it's going to happen on our terms, not theirs. Not after the way they've treated me. If they want to talk repayment, I'll have that conversation. I'll pay them back if that's what it takes to shut this chapter once and for all. But they need to get this through their heads. Supporting their daughter doesn't mean they get to dictate how I live my life or how we run our marriage. And if my wife ever starts to waver, if she begins to wonder whether maybe her parents have a point, I'll listen. I'll give her the space to say what's on her mind. But that doesn't mean I'm backing down. I've fought too hard for what we've built together. I'm not about to let them unravel it just because it doesn't match their idea of the perfect life. This is our marriage, not theirs. We're in this as a team, her and me. And nobody, not even her folks, gets to rewrite that story. We had a small, no-frills wedding, just a few close friends, nothing more. Definitely not the over-the-top affair my parents had pictured. The kind with glittering chandeliers, a quartet playing in the corner, and a room full of people more interested in being seen than celebrating love. Sandra didn't even bother to show up. The very next day, I got a letter. Cold. Formal. Straight from my parents' attorney. Just like that, I was cut out of the will. Gone from the family estate. Sandra was now the sole heir, and I was no longer welcome in the house I grew up in. They didn't beat around the bush, they flat out disowned me. For 3 solid years, we didn't exchange a single word. At first, I tried. I really did. I left voicemails on holidays and birthdays, even mailed a couple of handwritten letters hoping maybe something would get through. But nothing ever came back. Silence. Eventually, I stopped trying. So, Anthony and I did what we had to do. We started fresh. Built a life from the ground up. We bought a cozy little house in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing flashy, but it felt like home. We adopted a scruffy little rescue mutt who wormed his way into our hearts in no time. We found joy in the ordinary. No luxury cars, no designer labels, just a house filled with love, laughter, and a partnership rooted in respect and real commitment. Then one day, I took a pregnancy test. Positive. Anthony hugged me so tight I thought I might burst. He actually cried full-on, happy tears. We agreed to keep it under wraps until the first trimester passed. No one else knew yet. And then, out of the blue, I got a text from Sandra. Mom and Dad heard about the baby. They want to talk. Call them. I just stared at it, stunned. How the hell did they even find out? Anthony and I talked it over. Back and forth. weighing every angle. In the end, I figured maybe becoming grandparents had softened them a little. Maybe they were ready to make amends. I wanted to believe that. So I made the call. Big mistake. My mom answered, offered a quick congratulations, and then jumped straight into listing gifts they planned to send. High-end baby gear, designer clothes, even a brand new car. Not a single word about the past. No apology. No recognition of the damage they'd done. It didn't feel like love. It felt like a bribe. Anthony was livid. He said it felt like they were dangling money in front of us again, trying to prove they could offer our child things we couldn't. And honestly, he wasn't wrong. We didn't want their money, not for this, not for anything. But then came the pressure. Sandra called, scolding me for holding a grudge. Relatives I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly popped up, urging me to be the bigger person, to forgive and move on. It was overwhelming. Still, Anthony and I stood firm. I called my mom back and said, as calmly as I could, that we appreciated the gesture, but what we needed, if anything, was a sincere relationship, not a bunch of expensive distractions. She didn't take it well. She accused me of being ungrateful. Said I was punishing my child by denying them opportunities. Then she hung up on me. A few days later, the gifts arrived anyway. Boxes and boxes of high-end baby stuff. And parked right in front of our house? A brand new SUV, with a note slapped on the windshield. For our grandchild. We won't let your stubbornness deprive them of the best. Then, like it was nothing, Sandra showed up at our doorstep all smiles, gushing over the gifts, acting like we were suddenly one big happy family. I tried to explain where I was coming from, why this wasn't just about stuff, why it cut so much deeper, but she didn't get it. To her, this was just family reconnecting. To me, it was them trying to cover up years of emotional abuse with shiny wrapping paper. Anthony had my back, like always. He reminded me that we were doing just fine on our own. We didn't need their approval. And we definitely didn't need their wealth. But even so, the emotional tug-of-war was real. I felt caught between two versions of my life, the one I was born into and the one I had built from scratch. And it got me thinking hard. Am I doing the right thing? Can I really move on from all the pain? Should our baby know their grandparents, even if it means letting that toxicity back into our lives? It was eating me alive. We talked about seeing a counselor, someone who could help us sort through all of it without picking sides. But until then, we put our focus where it belonged, on the baby, on the future, on protecting the love we'd worked so hard to grow. It's been a few months now, and I've had time to really reflect. I've had to make some tough decisions, but one truth has stuck with me through it all. Real strength isn't always about what you can endure. Sometimes it's about what you're willing to walk away from. People at work used to joke that I was too frugal, that I was uptight, always skipping the fun stuff just to stash money away. But the truth is, I had a plan. I wasn't complaining, I was preparing. I kept my head down and focused on what I could control. Now I'm 35, working as an investment analyst, and finally starting to see that long-term discipline pay off. Remote work opened up new doors, and I found myself daydreaming about something I never thought was possible, owning a little cottage out in the country. Somewhere peaceful. Somewhere that's mine. Then, just about a week before everything blew up, I was over at my parents' place for one of our usual Saturday dinners. Same chaos as always. Betty and her husband Mark were dominating every conversation. Mark was ranting about work, Betty whining about their cramped apartment, and my parents were stressing over inflation and gas prices. Business as usual. I pretty much zoned out during dinner that night. While they bickered about gas prices and cramped apartments, I sat there quietly scrolling through real estate listings on my phone. After years of pinching pennies and living below my means, I finally had enough saved up for a down payment. And I'd found it, the perfect little 2-bedroom cottage. Wraparound porch, lush garden, and a living room straight out of a feel-good movie. It had charm, soul, And for the first time in a long while, I felt a real sense of possibility. I turned my phone toward my mom and showed her the listing, thinking maybe, just maybe, she'd smile. Maybe she'd be proud. But the expression on her face was pure disbelief, like I'd announced I was moving to another planet. The whole room fell silent. You could feel it, no one was used to me making choices that were only about me. My whole life, I'd been expected to make space for everyone else's needs first. But this time was different. This home? It was for me. Not for my parents. Not for Betty. Not for anyone else to weigh in on. A few days later, my mom called. She said she had a better idea. She'd found a different house. Bigger. More rooms. Perfect for the whole family, she told me, like that was supposed to mean something. Translation: more space for Betty's kids to run around, not something that actually fit my life. I tried to keep my cool and explained that I wasn't looking for a big family home. I wanted something simple, easy to take care of. Something warm and personal. That didn't sit well. She got irritated, then downright mad, accusing me of being short-sighted and selfish, of not thinking about the future or the family. And right on cue, Betty jumped into the mix. She started bombarding me with listings for huge houses, every one of them way over my budget and obviously chosen with her lifestyle in mind, not mine. I kept calmly repeating myself, trying to set a boundary, but it was like yelling into the wind. That's when I found Sarah, a realtor who actually listened. She sat down with me, heard what I wanted, not just square footage and features, but how I wanted to feel in the space. Within a few days, she found it. A stunning little cottage, just 40 minutes outside the city. Bright rooms with sunlight pouring in, a wide porch perfect for summer evenings, and a garden that practically begged for tomatoes and fresh herbs. The second I stepped through the front door, I knew this was home. I put down more than the required deposit just to ease the monthly burden, and I went all in. For the first time in my life, I was making a big decision that was completely, unapologetically mine. I even planned to break the news over dinner the following weekend. Big mistake. The second I told them, my dad slammed his hand on the table so hard the dishes jumped. He demanded to know why I'd make such a huge financial decision without consulting the family. My mom turned bright red. And Betty, always the smooth talker, sat back and calmly declared that her whole family, would be moving in with me. They need the space, she said. And since you're not using all of it, it just makes sense. I sat there stunned, wondering if I'd actually heard her right. The entitlement was unreal. My sister seriously expected me to hand over the house I'd worked my entire adult life to afford, just because she felt it was fair. I looked her dead in the eye and said one word: no. That didn't go over well. My mom ordered me to cancel the sale. Betty launched into a dramatic rant about how her kids were suffering having to share bedrooms. Mark, as usual, kept his head down and pretended none of it involved him. But I didn't budge. That house was mine. I had earned it. And I wasn't about to let anyone, even family, steamroll me into giving it up. The argument that followed was brutal. Voices were raised, tears were shed, and the tension was thick enough to choke on. The kids started crying. I could barely breathe. I grabbed my bag, walked out the front door, got in my car, and drove away, hands shaking, heart racing, but with zero doubt that I was doing what needed to be done. The next 2 weeks were hell. My parents showed up at my door, shouting like I'd betrayed them. Betty flooded my phone with texts and guilt-trippy photos of her kids crammed into their apartment. Distant relatives weighed in, calling me selfish, saying I'd changed. I'd had enough. I changed my number, cut off contact, blocked anyone who felt the need to pick a side. I even hired a new moving company to make sure no one knew when or where I was relocating. Moving day came quietly. No family drama. No tearful goodbyes. Just boxes, fresh air, and peace. That first night in my new home, I sat out on the porch with a hot cup of tea, listening to the wind dance through the trees. No buzzing phone. No one asking for anything. Just me, finally living a life I'd carved out on my own terms. For the first time ever, I felt completely free. I don't waste energy looking back anymore. The passive-aggressive posts on Facebook? They don't bother me. The guilt trips don't stick. This life I've built, this calm, quiet, beautiful life, it's mine. And I wouldn't trade it for anything.